With artificial intelligence becoming a larger part of our daily lives, there is growing concern for what AI could mean for elections. With 52% of the world's population heading to the ballot box this year, 52%, cybersecurity experts are sounding the alarm on how AI-fueled disinformation could affect voters and, of course, the outcome, and if intelligence agencies are prepared to counter it. That's important. Kat Duffy is a senior fellow for digital and cyberspace policy at the Council on Foreign Relations. She's joining us from London, England this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So multiple tech companies have announced some sort of policy around the use of AI. This month, OpenAI, probably the most popular, said it's barring political candidates in the 2024 U.S. election from using its software. But how are they going to do that? How are these rules enforceable?
It is a great question. So what we've seen is multiple platforms coming out. Usually when they're saying something like they're going to ban the use of AI, they're talking about on something like a paid political advertisement, where there would be a disclosure that that is in fact a political advertisement, right? But in terms of being able to prevent AI from being used for political messaging during elections, there's not really any effective way to do that at this moment.
Deep fakes, which we know manipulates the pre-existing footage to create manipulated content, posing as authentic, they've been spread. That's been spread about politicians, about other politicians. What other forms of AI-generated content do you want people to be aware of as they're partaking in campaigns right now?
I think one of the biggest possible threats is actually going to be in the fake production of audio as opposed to video. There's been a lot of focus on video, but video is still it's a little bit harder to achieve. It's a little more technically tricky, especially if there's not a lot of footage of, for example, a candidate, right, or a person out there. Audio, on the other hand, is much cheaper and much faster to produce. And we've already seen fake audio being used in elections around the world. We've seen it in Poland. We've seen it in Slovakia. We're also seeing video being used, but audio provides fewer contextual clues. And so it can be a little bit easier to fake people out with it than with video at this point.
And we know that people consume news and information so much differently now. They are not going to sit down and listen to, a minute and 30 news story with full context. They're going to grab that soundbite and then share it. Public Safety Canada here in this country says it's working on policies to counter the risk of AI disinformation. A public inquiry, remember, into alleged foreign interference in Canadian elections started. It is underway. Is nefarious AI use in elections by either domestic or foreign actors a great concern? And, we're looking at a federal election on the books right now for 2025.
Yes, I think it's absolutely a fair concern. And it's a fair concern for a couple of reasons, right? The first is that we have access to all of these tools that the general public has not had access to before, including very rapid creation of text, of audio, and then potentially of video. It's not just about malevolence, right? It will be about play. It will be about satire, parody, free expression uses that we actually quite care about, both in the United States and in Canada, and want to protect. And so there will be everything from foreign influence and malevolence all the way over to experimentation and creative, funny uses of it. We don't have any societal norms right now on what's appropriate and what's not. Well, I don't even think we have norms or agreements inside of households on what's appropriate or what's not. And so as we look to this year and next year, I think we're really looking at the kind of wild west of AI use during political campaigns.
And it's important to point out when you've got a meta ban like we do in this country on news organizations, on certain social media platforms, it makes it difficult to then battle mis and disinformation. You've called for public-private partnerships to help voters understand when content is genuine versus when it's AI. Voters are the most important part of this conversation. So how else can people protect themselves?
So certainly I think, disinformation and misinformation flourishes when there is a vacuum of good information, right? It fills holes where information doesn't exist. So the first thing that governments can be doing with citizens is really ensuring that they're working with community leaders, with trusted media sources, and with the various digital platforms to ensure that citizens have access to good, credible, trustworthy information. Ensure that supply is really the first step for governments. But I think for citizens, it's also important to remember that this can feel very overwhelming, right? It really just can seem too much, and it can get really easy for people to check out. This is the moment to check in, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really about understanding that if you have one person in your household who's getting their news from TikTok, and another person who's getting their news from broadcast TV, and another person who's getting their news from a WhatsApp chat, then you all three may be living in a very different reality. And so making sure that you're checking in with your family, with your people, with your community to ensure that you're actually working across the same basis of facts. You have a lot of agency about where you ingest your information and what type of information you ingest. And so being careful about your media diet in the same way that we think about a balanced food diet, being careful about your media diet, especially in the lead up to something like an election, I think is a personal responsibility for every citizen and a place where people can retake some control.
It is a very deep conversation and one that we should be having more and more often. Kat Duffy, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.